Issac Clarke, the space engineer that can adapt to almost any situation, and Leon Kennedy, considered to be one of, if not the best fighter that the Resident Evil universe has to offer. I was reminded of this matchup not too long ago on Twitter when I saw people discussing who the strongest survival horror protagonist is, and this is the matchup that it usually comes down to. So I thought, hey, maybe I'll make a video on it, and here we are. So this video is going to answer the question, who would win in a 1v1, Issac or Leon? I'll start by breaking each character down individually, and then at the end of the video, we'll talk about how the fight would likely go under different circumstances. We'll go over stuff like speed, attack potency, durability, standard equipment, all of that stuff. But before we get too far into the video, guys, don't forget to leave a like and sub to the channel if you end up enjoying the video. I want to do more content like this. I just want to find interesting matchups that haven't already been covered to death by everyone else. So if you guys have any recommendations, feel free to leave them in the comments down below for me. But with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and start talking about our boy, Issac.
Issac, no! It's a really bad idea.
I'll stick around. I'm full of bad ideas.
Starting off with Issac's standard equipment, the most important thing that he has is, of course, his signature suit. Now, throughout the games, he has a massive amount of different suits that you can buy or unlock, and of course all of them have varying stats and levels of protection that it gives Issac. However, in function and lore, they all pretty much serve the same purposes. They give Issac protection from things like extreme heat, extreme cold, the vacuum of space, and of course some physical damage protection as well. Issac also has access to his kinesis module, which basically is exactly what it sounds like. It gives him a technological version of telekinesis, being able to grab things or move heavy machinery from far distances. Besides that, he also has his stasis module, which allows him to shoot a projectile that, upon impact, creates a small to medium-sized AoE, and within that AoE or anything that the projectile touches, it slows the time of for that object. Now, with Issac having a whole trilogy of games to himself, that of course comes with a large arsenal of weapons, and while he has way too many weapons for me to go in detail about on every single one, otherwise we would be here forever, I do want to at least go into detail with a couple, because I know a lot of people might not be familiar with some of the weapons Issac has, how they work, how powerful they are, whereas that's not really the case for like RE4 or just Resident Evil in general, since those games take place in pretty much modern day, whereas obviously Dead Space takes place in the future. So a lot of these weapons, aka tools, are very different and need some type of explanation if you're unfamiliar. So just to name a few, we have the iconic plasma cutter, which in Dead Space 1, it is a mining laser. It's used for carving chunks of rock. And in Dead Space 2, it's referred to as a tissue laser, though both of these versions of the weapon work exactly the same way. And it doesn't seem like the second one is less powerful than the first. So I'm not sure what the difference is, or maybe just that the tool is used for the same thing. It also has the added effect once it's fully upgraded to lighting whatever it hits on fire as well. Then we have the pulse rifle, which is basically just your standard assault rifle but slightly futuristic. It fires ballistic rounds, so it's not really any different than a AR that we would have today, at least not from what I can see. Then we have the line gun, which is just a bigger, stronger version of the plasma cutter. Then we have the contact beam, which is the strongest weapon in the entire trilogy, and this weapon basically fires a beam of concentrated energy, which can just completely decimate anything it touches within seconds. And its alternate fire is just a single shot charged blast, which is even more powerful and pretty much one-shots anything in the game. Obviously, if you've played Dead Space, there's a lot more weapons than this, but like I said, I don't want to go in depth on every single weapon because we'd be here all day. So with that, let's talk a little bit about Issac's durability. Now, the best way we can gauge Issac's durability is by taking a look at the enemy that he's constantly fighting and taking hits from, that being the necromorphs. Now, one thing to understand about the necromorphs is that they are deconfigured and recombined human beings. So the marker will basically take dead humans and reorganize their flesh, their muscle, and their bones to make them stronger than what they were before. Another thing to note is that all necromorphs are basically flooded with adrenaline. They're all essentially just peak human to slightly superhuman level threats. Even the weakest versions of necromorphs, such as the lurkers, can shoot projectiles that are capable of exploding people's heads upon impact. And of course, there's various types of necromorphs, some being way larger and stronger than the others. The most basic variant of a necromorph is the common slasher, and these guys can absolutely rip normal humans to shreds. They can pick people up and rip them in half. They can cut off their limbs with 1 or 2 swings of their bone claws. And Issac, along with some protection from his suit, is able to take hits from these guys. He's also shown to be able to tank explosions pretty much point blank range multiple times throughout the entire trilogy. One in Dead Space Remake where he gets blown out of the Kellyan. The most notable example that I can think of is in Dead Space 2 when Issac is running away from the Tormentor and he grabs onto the side of the gunship, and as he's trying to escape the Tormentor, he gets grabbed and some cans of ammunition kind of spread out all over the place, and Issac is able to shoot a ammunition canister from a gunship at point blank range. It explodes right in his face and seemingly takes out both the gunship and the Tormentor, but he takes 0 damage and just blows into the sprawl and gets up pretty much like nothing happened. And in Dead Space 3, he survives a moon falling somehow. I don't think anybody with their right mind thinks that Issac has moon level durability, so I'm just kind of going to chalk that up to luck. In Dead Space 3, he can also take shots from firearms from the necromorphs that are able to use guns. Now, when it comes to speed, there's really not a whole lot to talk about. Issac is pretty much just a completely normal guy in this category, except for one exception, and that's reaction time. In Dead Space 1, once you get onto the Kellyan, you find that there are necromorphs that have been affected by their stasis modules. Now, normally stasis modules will slow time for whatever it affects, but for some reason for these necromorphs in particular, it has the opposite effect, and it actually speeds them up greatly, basically giving them superhuman speed. And Issac is able to react to these guys, kill them, and sometimes even fight multiple at the same time. So I do think there is some argument to be had here that you can make for Issac having some slight superhuman reaction time, though to what extent you can't really say, because there's not really a great way to measure how fast these guys are moving. Moving on to Issac's attack potency, one thing I do kind of need to make clear is that most of Issac's weapons aren't necessarily weapons, except for some things like the pulse rifle or the seeker rifle, which are firearms designed to kill things. Pretty much everything else is a form of mining or heavy construction equipment. The flamethrower, the plasma cutter, the line gun, all of these things are used for carving chunks of rock or some kind of construction purpose, which is why they're all so powerful and why most make the pulse rifle, the one main gun that you get throughout all of the games, look kind of weak in comparison. The force gun, for example, is so strong that it shoots out a blast in front of Issac that pretty much covers the entirety of whatever's in front of him, and is so powerful that it can blast skin and muscle completely off of necromorphs, basically turning them into skeletons in 1 or 2 blasts. It can also fire a small gravity well, which is basically like kind of a mini black hole, which uses gravity to pull everything in the immediate area into the center. And anything that's being pulled in just straight up can't go anywhere, they can't move, they can't really do anything. So they're basically sitting targets. Pretty much every weapon in the game is so strong that it can bisect these superhuman / peak human level necromorphs completely in half sometimes, blowing their limbs off, their heads off, just absolutely mutilating them. The kinesis module in particular is used specifically for moving heavy equipment and objects, and I'm talking about lifting or picking up equipment that's probably hundreds, thousands, maybe a couple of tons even. It's actually so strong that it can just straight up rip necromorph limbs right off their bodies while they're still alive, or even shoot objects so hard that not only does it pierce the necromorphs, but it sends their entire bodies flying feet across the room and nails them to the wall. Or hell, it can just straight up blow their limbs off completely. Interestingly enough, Issac can also stomp and punch so hard that he just straight up removes limbs off of necromorphs sometimes. I've seen him literally punch a necromorph's head off. So he might actually be a lot stronger than people think. Yeah, when your entire arsenal is based around futuristic construction and mining equipment, they're bound to be kinda strong. Now for the Leon Kennedy portion of the video, one thing you'll probably notice is that this section is going to be a lot shorter than Issac's, and the reason for that is not only does Leon just have less feats to go over than Issac does, but a lot of his stuff just needs a lot less explaining. Most of his equipment and things that he uses are just modern day versions of guns or equipment that we have in the real world, so it just takes a lot less explaining or context given around a lot of this stuff. So really quick, for Leon's standard equipment, I'll kind of just bullet point them off. He has access to things like the bulletproof vest, combat knife, pistols, striker shotgun, various grenades like normal, frag grenades, incendiary, flash, etc., the RPG, sniper rifles, SMGs and ARs, and the Magnum, and if you want to throw in the mine thrower, you can do that too. As for durability, he can tank hits from superhuman BOWs such as the Tyrant or Super Tyrants. And for speed, he actually outran a Tyrant, which apparently they can reach up to speeds up to 43 miles per hour, and he can react and dodge attacks from said Tyrants as well, so his reaction time would be around the same level. For attack potency, he can actually strike so hard that he can just make people's heads explode. It's actually fucking crazy. Unlike Issac, where a lot of his special abilities or durability or just pretty much anything comes from his suit, I'm just gonna be real, Leon is just straight up superhuman, undeniably. And as for the attack potency of his weapons, I mean, what really is there to say? I mean, he, like I said, he just uses weapons that we have in the real world pretty much. So if you've seen an RPG, you know what an RPG does. If you've seen people fire pistols or shotguns, you kind of have an idea of what they're doing too. Just not a whole lot to go over with Leon.
Try to save one person, 100 others die. I guess I changed too.
You? Leon S. Kennedy. You haven't changed. You just think you have.
And obviously Leon is a master fighter, whether it's with any form of martial arts or knives, bladed weapons in general, firearms. He's pretty much just a master of every fighting form you could really think of. Whereas Issac isn't a fighter at all, he's an engineer. And he likely doesn't have very much, if any, firearm training at all, though he does know how to use the pulse rifle, so maybe he's fired some rifles or some weapons throughout his life, but he doesn't have any military level training. So when it comes to skill in combat, Leon has Issac beat in every single category. It's not even close. It's a complete mismatch in that sense. However, because of Issac's tech, there's just not a whole lot that Leon can do. And I'm gonna be honest, this is a really bad mismatch. Even if you want to say that Leon is way faster than Issac, it's not such a big difference that he can speed blitz him like he's Goku before he could even react and roundhouse kick Issac's head off. Issac, once again, through the necromorphs that are sped up with stasis, has shown that he's able to react to superhuman levels of speed to some degree, and at the end of the day, all Issac has to do is reach out with kinesis and rip Leon's arms or head off or whatever, and obviously Leon being a normal guy who lives in pretty much modern day, he has no idea technology like that exists. He has no idea that Issac has access to this technology. And even if you want to say that Leon is way faster than Isaac, which he definitely is, it doesn't really matter because Isaac has stasis. He could just hit Leon with stasis. Now, some people might argue, well, stasis is a projectile, Leon could just dodge it. Well, number one, we don't really know how fast stasis moves. And also number two, it has an AoE, it explodes upon impact. So even if Leon dodged the projectile, he would have to be out of range of the AoE as well. And once again, he doesn't even know what this technology does. He doesn't know that it explodes upon impact and has this area of effect. So he's not going to know to dodge really far away and get far away from the stasis blast. He's probably just going to do the bare minimum and dodge it and then get caught anyway, which in that case, it's just GG's. If Isaac hits Leon with any weapon in his arsenal, the force gun, the plasma cutter, anything, or uses kinesis on him, it's just an instant game over. Now with Leon, of course, having a ton of weapons of his own, things like pistols, shotguns, the RPG, etc., it's also possible that he gets off some shots first before Isaac, especially with him being more combat ready and just far more skilled than Isaac. However, because of Isaac's suit, most of Leon's weapons would probably be relatively ineffective, at least when it comes to taking only a few hits. If Leon decided to use a pistol or pretty much anything that isn't like a magnum or some high caliber weapon, I think most parts of Isaac's armor would just deflect and block the bullets or just lower the impact enough to where it doesn't damage Isaac significantly. And if Leon decided to use something like the RPG, if you've ever seen an RPG in real life, you know that they fly really slow, they're not like a bullet. So that's just prime for Isaac just grabbing that with kinesis and throwing it back at Leon. Now, if Leon is able to get close to Isaac and turn it into a hand-to-hand fight, then it's very likely that Leon wins. However, there's still a chance he could get grabbed by kinesis, or he could get slowed down by stasis if Isaac decided to just fire it off. But at that point, Isaac might get caught in stasis as well, so I'm not exactly sure how that would work. But I would imagine he would still be able to grab Leon with kinesis at pretty much any point. And at that point, it's just GG's right there. Kinesis can literally pick up whole bodies and throw them so hard with so much kinetic force that they're just like pinned to a wall if they're hit with like a projectile or something. So if Isaac even grabbed Leon with kinesis and just threw him up against the wall, the kinetic force would probably just kill Leon right there. And if not, it would probably knock him out or damage him enough to where the fight would be pretty much unwinnable for Leon. Things like the combat knife also wouldn't do too much good because, once again, Isaac's wearing a suit of armor that has protection against physical damage and things like this. So him throwing a knife or trying to stab Isaac is just prime for getting grabbed or stasised or shot or any number of these things. And it really just comes down to Isaac having a ton of win conditions, whereas Leon having almost none. It's really hard to find a situation where Leon can do something, have Isaac sustain a critical amount of damage, or just outright kill him before Isaac is able to do literally anything to Leon. I mean, you really have to put into perspective if he gets grabbed by kinesis, shot with anything by kinesis, gets hit by any of Isaac's weapons, gets stasised, pretty much gets touched by Isaac in any number of ways, it's an insta GG, whereas Isaac can probably take some hits from pistols and some of these modern day weapons that Leon has, as well as his combat knife being pretty much ineffective, especially since he has to get close to Isaac to use it, and if he throws it, it can just be kinesis and thrown back even harder and faster than Leon could ever throw one. I'm trying really hard not to sound like a dick rider or biased or whatever. People love Leon. I love Leon. He's really cool. One of the best RE characters. But I think people underestimate the tech gap between Isaac and Leon and how powerful Isaac's tech really is in a situation like this, or just in general, really. You also have to realize Isaac is a genius, maybe not necessarily a combat genius in particular, but a genius all around. And you have to realize that by the time of Dead Space 2 and 3, Isaac is no longer this random guy with no combat experience at all, who doesn't know how to fight or handle a combat situation. He's already been through all of Dead Space 1, and he's basically a veteran at this point. I mean, he's got hundreds of bodies under his belt by this point, and a ton of combat experience. He's basically a one-man army, so you can't really say that Isaac is just this buffoon when it comes to combat, and he's going to make all of these mistakes that leave him wide open for Leon to get an easy kill off of him. Maybe you can make some arguments that if they start off really far away from each other and Leon has a sniper rifle, he would win, because obviously he's a far better shooter. Most of Issac's weapons are better at close to medium range except for the seeker rifle, and if it ever came down to like a sniper battle, I guess Leon is just winning that pretty much no matter what. Once again, Leon is a weapons expert with military training. There's just no way Issac would win a situation like that. I mean, we could also do something like take away Issac's armor or take away both of their weapons and make it hand-to-hand. And in that situation, yes, Leon of course wins the hand-to-hand battle, and without any armor or stasis or, you know, kinesis or anything like that, maybe you can make the argument that Leon would get a shot off first, and since he's not wearing any armor, the bullet would hit Issac and that would pretty much be the end of him. And in that situation, I can also see Kennedy winning as well, but just standard, not nerfing anybody, not taking away anybody's abilities, just how they are with their standard equipment. I really don't see a way Leon can win reasonably at all, whereas Issac just has a ton of win conditions, and that's just really what it comes down to. I didn't even name all of what Issac can do or bring out in this fight. I mean, he has other weapons like the detonator as well, and just other equipment that he could bring out that I did not name. Don't forget that at the end of Dead Space 1, Issac killed the Hive Mind, which is not only bigger than pretty much any BOW in the Resident Evil verse, but it's also hyper intelligent as well, unlike a lot of the BOWs in Resident Evil. And on top of that, if you really wanted to get crazy, Issac killed a moon-sized necromorph that once again was like hyper intelligent. Yes, that's right, he 1v1'd a moon and still won. Issac is a lot more cracked than people give him credit for. But with all that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to leave a like, sub to the channel, do all that good algorithm stuff for me. It helps a lot and I would really appreciate it. And if you guys think I was unfair to Leon, if you guys think I'm missing some feats or some equipment that I should have mentioned in the video, please leave them down in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think of the conclusion I came to, if you agree with it, if you don't agree, all that good stuff. And as always, guys, I'll see you next time.